The previews will continue until morale improves. Actually, as long as we're being inundated with Magic products, a reprint set is exactly the type of product that we need for keeping secondary market prices at least somewhat reasonable. The original Double Masters set did a great job of bringing prices down on expensive staples for all formats, like Jace the Mind Sculptor, Stoneforge Mystic, Doubling Season, Mana Crypt, and Cyclonic Rift. And while many Magic the Gathering cards from that set began a steady climb back up in price after about 6 months on the market, there was a reasonable window of time when these cards were accessible to more players than they had been in years. Likely, the same will be true for the cards reprinted in Double Masters 2022. Staples for every format, from Pioneer to Legacy to Commander, have been given new life in this massive reprint set. So much so that a list of every great reprint from Double Masters 2022 would basically be me reading the full set preview from the Magic the Gathering website. Instead, I've gone ahead and compiled here a list of the 8 best reprints specifically for the Commander format. Even if you're not going to be buying packs of Double Masters 2022, to draft, which is what you do when you buy packs, you might want to keep an eye on these cards for Commander. I've prioritized those reprints that Commander needed the most. First ever reprints, downshifts in rarity, and flexible format staples that all got reprinted in Double Masters 2022. But first, a quick word about this video. This video is brought to you by Keeps. Do you wish you could get reprints not only of Magic the Gathering cards, but of your hair? Well, you can't. That's why if you start to see the signs of a thinning hairline or male pattern baldness, it is critical you act immediately to prevent hair loss, and that is where Keeps comes in. Did you know 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35? Well, the best way to prevent hair loss is to do something about it while you still have hair left. You used to have to go to the doctor's office for your hair loss prescription. Now, thanks to Keeps, you can visit a doctor online and get hair loss medication delivered right to your door. Say goodbye to those pharmacy checkout lines and awkward doctor visits. You're working with a real doctor online with safe and secure delivery of this medication, and this is just the generic versions of the only 2 FDA-approved hair loss medications. You may have tried them before, but probably never for this price. The sooner you start using Keeps, the more hair you'll save. So if you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/Tolarian or click the link in the description to receive 50% off of your first order. That's KEEPS.com/Tolarian, because just like the original Dual Lands, your hairline isn't ever getting reprinted. Thank you, Keeps, for sponsoring this video. So what are the top 8 reprints for Commander from Double Masters 2022? Well, coming in at number 8, it's Mana Drain. That's right, Mana Drain is back again. But I'm not mad about it. In fact, if you ask me, there's no such thing as too many reprints of this card. The most powerful counterspell ever printed is literally only legal in Commander and Vintage. And since it doesn't really see play in Vintage, and you probably don't really play Vintage, well, let me tell you that counterspells in Vintage really need to have a 0 or 1 mana initial investment, and all of that makes Mana Drain essentially a Commander exclusive card. But the cost remains too prohibitive to see wide play in the format, which is a shame, since untapping after casting a Mana Drain on an opponent's turn is a rush that should not be exclusive to the game's elites. Thankfully, as the second reprint in less than 2 years, the card should be the most accessible it's ever been. Blue Mages, the time to grab this card is right now, or at least within a few weeks of Double Masters 22 hitting the shelves. Next up on the list at number 7, we have Phyrexian Altar, also known as the card that Ashnod's Altar's partner told it not to worry about. The ability to sacrifice a creature to generate a colored mana of your choice is a unique effect in Magic, and thus this card has been highly sought after for Commander players. The premier sacrifice outlet in Commander has been prohibitively expensive for a few years now. Its first ever reprint came in Ultimate Masters, which saw the card tank to about $25 after its initial release. price. But in the years since that set hit the shelves, the card's price returned to the upper $70 range. If you've been looking to upgrade your Aristocrats deck, Phyrexian Altar is the card for you, and the time to pick one up is soon. Now for number 6, what's another word for Wrath of God? Ah yes, Damnation. Number 6 on the list is Damnation. Much like Mana Drain, we've gotten a Damnation reprint fairly recently relative to a lot of cards on this list. Most recently in Time Spiral Remastered, which you probably weren't able to get because they didn't print any of it. But now it's in Double Masters 2022, which you probably aren't able to get because they didn't print any of it. Thank you, Wizards of the Coast. Well, what makes this reprint of Damnation so good is that its rarity has been downshifted back to rare from Mythic after being upshifted for Time Spiral Remastered. Compared to white, black has a much smaller selection of board wipes in Commander, which matters since board wipes are a hugely important means of catching back up in the multiplayer format. The original Double Masters saw a reprint of the other best black board wipe, Toxic Deluge. Now Damnation joins it, and thanks to the wave of Damnation printings we've had recently, hopefully this card will stick around with its toxic counterpart below the $20 threshold for some time to come. Next up is another card that's already had a reprint in the last couple of years, but this will be its first reprint that isn't a specialty printing. I'm referring, of course, to Teferis Protection. Sometimes a player plays a card that instantly kills every other player at the table, and that is why Teferis Protection exists. With Protection in hand, when your opponent decides to try to one-shot the whole table, you get to say, "Not me though, y'all stay safe." Teferis Protection is both a powerful and unique effect, the perfect Uno reverse card for pulling victory from the jaws of defeat. You'll likely want to pick one of these up for each white deck you have in your collection, and maybe even a few extra. This card has been and will continue to be a staple forever. Number 4 on the list is a powerful mana dork that is great in multicolor decks. Bloom Tender was first printed in Eventide and hasn't seen a reprint since then, apart from a secret layer drop last year. Because of its scarcity, the card hasn't seen as much play as it likely should, but hopefully that changes with the release of Double Masters 2022. Whether you're comboing with Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal, or just honorably tapping Bloom Tender for 2 or 3 mana every turn, Bloom Tender deserves a spot in your multicolor Commander deck. Next on our list, did you pay the 2? Excuse me, did you pay the 2? 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 Will you pay to make your opponents pay the 2? You may remember, dear viewer, a time before we had Archivist of Ogmus and Deep Gnome Terramancer and Esper Sentinel, when white was the butt of every Commander color pie joke. When all we had in the way of ramp spells in white was a measly Knight of the White Orchid. Let's just say it was tough out there for white mages. Then, in early 2019, a Light in the Darkness, a 4-mana enchantment from a standard set that marked the beginning of a new era for white Commander decks. Smothering Tithe has been the creme de la creme of white ramp for more than 3 years now, and for good reason. It's powerful, it scales the game, and above all else, it drives your opponents absolutely bananas. Did you pay the 2? How about now? Smothering Tithe is basically an auto-include in any white deck, which means it absolutely needed a reprint to get the price back down. Exactly how much of a price dip we get remains to be seen, but this card's inclusion in the set was an absolute slam dunk. Do you pay the 2? Speaking of 2, the number 2 card on my list is a card you likely have never seen in paper before. It's not even necessarily that great in Commander compared to the alternatives. If anything, it's the 3rd best version of this effect legal in the format, but given that this reprint will single-handedly take the card from virtually non-existent to a card you might reasonably own, I had to include it in the list. Before this set, Imperial Seal's first and only printing came in a set called Portal 3 Kingdoms, which was the third in a trilogy of Portal sets released in the late 90s that were designed to be an introduction to Magic the Gathering for new players. As such, Wizards of the Coast tried to keep the rules of these sets very simple. The only card types included in the Portal trilogy were creatures and sorceries, although some of those sorceries had previously been printed as instants. In the case of Imperial Seal, the card is the sorcery version of the card Vampiric Tutor, the second strongest tutor effect after Demonic Tutor. Turning Vampiric into a sorcery might seem like a minor change, but in practice, the sorcery speed restriction on Imperial Seal is a huge drawback. In Commander especially, having to decide a full turn cycle ahead of time what card you'd like to tutor to the top of your library means you don't get to react to what your opponents have done on their turns. Furthermore, you put an immediate target on your back, since your opponents will have that whole turn cycle to react to you fetching what is likely one of the best cards in your deck. So you might be wondering, if that's all true, how did Imperial Seal make this list at all, and why is it so high up? Well, Portal 3 Kingdoms was released in 1999, and unlike its Portal predecessors, was primarily intended for Asian markets. The flavor of the set is based on a period of Chinese history known as, you guessed it, the Three Kingdoms. Because of this, cards from this set are R-A-R-E rare, and every card that is remotely good from this set is worth hundreds of dollars. In fact, the original printing of Imperial Seal is over $1,700. Wow. At the time of this recording, the Double Masters version of Imperial Seal is still nearly $400, but that price will almost assuredly go down as more and more of the set gets opened. So while most Commander players won't be scrambling to acquire this card over a Demonic or Vampiric Tutor, the mere fact that for the first time in over a decade, you'll be able to buy Imperial Seal, or crack open an Imperial Seal, without shelling out a couple grand warrants the card's inclusion at number 2 on this list. Coming in at number 1, okay, Wizards of the Coast, we get it. You didn't want to put Dockside Extortionist in Baldur's Gate or Streets of New Capenna because you wanted to put it in the most expensive Magic the Gathering set of all time. I get it. I understand. That does not mean I forgive. Whether or not this was the best set for a Dockside Extortionist reprint compared to the Crime World standard set, where packs were $4 each, or the Fantasy Port City supplement set, where packs were intended to be more than $4 each, but then plummeted down to that, is up for debate. But frankly, I'm just glad we finally got a reprint of the Shady Goblin at all. What else could I put at number 1 but the 2-mana ramp spell in red to end all 2-mana ramp spells in red? Now don't get me wrong, I am not a fan of Dockside Extortionist or the effect it has on the Commander metagame. If it were up to me, Dockside Extortionist would never have been made at all, let alone be legal in Commander. But it's not up to me. Not yet, anyway. Soon, Professor. Bide your time. And as long as it is legal, it should be accessible to players at a reasonable price. It's obscene that an auto-include Commander staple is over $70 each. Luckily, as of the recording of this video, the reprint of Dockside Extortionist lowered in price down to about $45. And it's dropping still. Since it's a mythic, and since again, distribution of Double Masters 2022 is not ideal, it might wind up not dropping much lower than this. We'll see if it does continue to decrease in price, but either way, this reprint is long overdue, and thus Dockside Extortionist is hands down the number 1 Double Masters reprint for Commander from Double Masters 2022. But now I want to hear from you. Did I miss anything? Which Commander cards are you most excited to see reprinted in Double Masters 2022? Let me know in the comments below. And thanks again to Keeps for sponsoring this video. If you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/Tolarian or click the link in the description to receive 50% off of your first order. That's KEEPS.com/Tolarian. You are super sexy with hair or without, but Keeps is a tool that you can use if Mother Nature future has other ideas than what you would like your hairline to be. Thank you, Keeps, for sponsoring this video.
Next time on Shuffle Up and Play.
Ristic Studies. Spice 8 Rack. I've brought Pauper decks. I will have you know that Spice 8 Rack is my favorite Magic the Gathering bread tuber.
Because I be making that bread.
Oh yeah, baby!
Where are your fairies?
Yeah, we know all about it.
What am I gonna do?
Do you need land or something?
I really need land.
Super far behind here in this game, and I drew one of my best outs. One of my best snuff outs.
Oh, you hear that? That's the sound of the proletariat rising,
Let's
baby.
go, baby.
That's the
We
sound
are the
of it.
union.
You got nothing to lose but your chains, baby, and I just melted them with a fiery goblin.